AITA for refusing to sign a postnup after my husband inherited millions. When I married my husband, money was never an issue between us. We both came from modest backgrounds, where financial stability was something you had to fight for. Neither of us had wealthy families, trust funds, or safety nets. Everything we had, we built together, from our small apartment to the used car we bought when we finally saved enough. We knew what it was like to struggle, to budget down to the last dollar, and to dream about a future where money wouldn't be such a constant worry. Because of that, our marriage had always been a partnership. We split expenses fairly, made financial decisions as a team, and never felt the need to draw lines about who owned what. His money was my money, and my money was his. That's just how we saw things. We weren't naive, of course. We had heard about prenuptial agreements, but it never even crossed our minds to get one. What would we be protecting? Neither of us had anything worth securing when we got married. Then, everything changed. A few months ago, my husband received a massive inheritance from an uncle he was never particularly close with. It came out of nowhere. One day, we were carefully budgeting for our future, discussing whether we could afford to take a small vacation, and the next, he was suddenly worth millions. Just like that, everything shifted. At first, I was thrilled for him. It was life-changing. We had spent years working so hard, and now, out of the blue, we were financially free. No more stressing over bills. No more calculating every expense down to the cent. We could finally breathe, take a step back, and enjoy life without the constant pressure of making ends meet. I remember the way we celebrated that night. We opened a bottle of wine, the expensive kind we never used to buy, and talked about all the possibilities. Paying off our mortgage. Traveling the world. Investing in something meaningful. The best part was that it didn't feel like his victory. It felt like ours. Because even though the money had technically come from his family, we had spent years building our life together. This was supposed to be our future. That's why, when he sat me down one evening and casually slid a postnuptial agreement across the table, I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. At first, I thought it was a joke. The moment my eyes landed on the thick stack of legal papers, my stomach twisted into knots. The words blurred together as I tried to process what was happening. A postnup. Why? I looked up at him, waiting for an explanation, something that would make this make sense. But he just smiled like it was nothing. I think we should do this, he said, tapping the papers with his finger like we were discussing a grocery list. I felt frozen in place. This was the man I had built a life with. The man I had trusted with everything. And now, after years of sharing everything, after fighting through financial struggles together, he wanted to legally separate his money from me. I swallowed hard and asked him, why? His response was chilling. It's just to protect what's mine. You understand, right? And in that moment, I felt something inside me break. I stared at him, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. To protect what's mine. The words echoed in my head, growing louder with every passing second. What's mine? Not what's ours. Not what we built together. Not what will secure both of us moving forward. Just his. It felt like something inside me cracked. For years, we had been partners in every sense of the word. Through the good times and the bad, through late-night budgeting sessions and endless sacrifices, we had built a life together. When we first got married, we shared everything, every struggle, every victory, every decision. Every bill that needed to be paid was our bill. Every dollar we saved was our savings. But now, suddenly, there was a distinction. There was his money and my money. His future and my future. His security and, apparently, none for me. I felt my pulse hammering in my ears as I picked up the stack of legal papers, my hands barely steady. The words blurred together, but I could see the intent clearly enough. If I signed this, I was agreeing that, should anything ever happen between us, I would walk away with nothing. I placed the papers down carefully, as if they might burn me. I wasn't even angry yet, I was too stunned. I had trusted this man with everything. I had been there when we had nothing, when we were barely scraping by, when we had to cut corners to afford rent, when every dollar was stretched to its breaking point. I had been beside him during sleepless nights spent stressing over student loans, medical bills, and unexpected expenses. And yet, now that he had received life-changing money, he had decided that I wasn't part of it. I swallowed hard and forced myself to speak, even though my voice felt distant from my body. "Where is this coming from?" I asked, keeping my tone even, though my hands curled into fists under the table. He let out a sigh, like this was a conversation he had been preparing for. Like he had already mapped out how I was going to react. "It's not a big deal," he said with an almost dismissive wave of his hand. "A lot of people do this. It's just smart to protect assets." I almost laughed. A lot of people also get prenups before they get married, before they build a life together. That made sense. That was preparing for the unknown. But a postnup. After we had already spent years as partners. This wasn't about protecting assets. This was about him protecting himself, from me. I felt a pressure building in my chest, a weight so heavy that I thought I might explode. He wasn't asking me to sign this because it was logical. He was asking me to sign this because, deep down, he didn't see us as a team anymore. And the worst part? He didn't even think it was a big deal. A heavy silence settled between us, thick with unspoken words. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, steady but heavy, like my body already knew something was breaking before my mind could fully catch up. I had always thought of our marriage as a partnership. We had faced every hardship together, split every burden, and worked through every struggle with the understanding that we were building something for us. And yet, sitting here now, staring at the thick legal document in front of me, it was painfully clear, that had never been his perspective. Now that he had wealth, true financial security, he suddenly wanted to separate himself from me, to protect himself. He had never seen me as an equal in this, not in the way that really mattered. It was as if, in his mind, our financial struggles had been mine to bear with him, but his success was his alone. I had never once imagined a future where we weren't together, but I could see now that he had. Not only had he thought about it, he had taken steps, calculated, legal steps, to prepare for it. He had sat with a lawyer, drawn up documents, outlined assets, all while looking me in the eye and calling me his wife. And he expected me to be okay with that. Something inside me grew still, the sharp edges of betrayal settling in as realization sank deeper. I had been his partner in everything, his struggles, his failures, his ambitions. I had been by his side when we had nothing. I had sacrificed, planned, saved, and done everything I could to help build a future for both of us. And now that the future looked different, he was making it clear that I wasn't part of it in the same way anymore. I sat there, staring at the document, the weight of years pressing down on me. There was no scenario in which this request came from a place of love. It was preparation. A safety net, but not for me. For him. That hurt more than anything. For the first time in our marriage, I could feel the divide between us, a line he had drawn in ink and legal jargon, a division between what was his and what was mine. I realized then that, to him, my worth had only ever been in what I could contribute. When we were struggling, I had been valuable. But now that the financial struggle was over, I was suddenly someone who needed to be kept at arm's length. A painful clarity settled over me. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was disappointed, sad in a way that felt deeper than words. Because once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to piece it back together the same way. And this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was him telling me, in no uncertain terms, that he didn't see me the way I had seen him. I knew, then and there, that I would never sign that paper. But more than that, I knew something else too. If he truly believed he needed it, then maybe this marriage was already over.